You're listening to the Patriot Nation podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation podcast. As always, brought to you by FanDuel, the official sports wagering partner of CLNS Media. Go to fanduel.com/Boston to sign up to get in on the action today. Matt, we're here again. Listen, I got some good news for you. Ready for this, Matt? There's some good news. The Patriots will not lose on Sunday. It's great news. Isn't that great news?
Where's the confetti?
That's so good. It's so good. I love it. I'm so excited. No loss to the Patriots this weekend. Very exciting. Of course, that's because they have a bye this weekend. But, whatever, dude, Nevertheless, we're not going to see them lose this weekend, which is pretty nice because we haven't had that luck in quite some time, unfortunately. And it's been just about as ugly as you can imagine.
Yeah, I'll take a little reprieve here, get to watch football in a stress-free environment.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be, We need a week away from this team.
Yeah, we do. Yes, we
More
do.
than a week, quite honestly, but I'll take a week right now.
Well, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. So, but nevertheless, here we are. So it is bye week. And you know what that means, boys and girls, if you've been paying attention and sticking with us through this whole podcast, you know that we do a trivia question at the end of every show. And the first person to answer the trivia question correct was going to be entered into a drawing. And we are going to do that drawing live on air in the next few minutes. By the way, the Celtics just beat the 76ers, which is just glorious, without
I'll take it.
Porzingis or Jaylen Brown. No big deal. By 10. It wasn't even close.
On the road.
It wasn't even close. 10 on the road in Philly without two of their best players.
Started strong and ended strong in that one.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So, all right. Anyways, let's get into. Let's pull up the wheel.
Do it?
Pull up the wheel. By the way, I mean, how sick does that wheel look with the logo in the middle? Come on.
And shout out before we do it. Shout out to all the people who got right answers. I'll read off some of the names here. I'll give everybody a little toot of the horn.
Yes.
Chris St. Jean, that is my dad. Thaddeus Skywalker, Dave Archibald, Matt Minito, Lime Green Elevator, Jared Goyette, Gary Sourputz, Dark Blue Gold, TJ Pindar, Snap Time, Murph, AJ Smith, and George Varghese. All with correct answers, all entered in here.
Love it. Love it. Matt Menino's obviously got a few in there. He's got 2 or 3 or maybe even more.
He's got 5 of the 18.
Well, hey, listen, it's okay. It's all right. So, all right.
Should we spin this thing? Do you want to count me down, Pat?
Let's do it. I'm going to go 3, 2, 1. Give it a spin. I wish we had like sound effects going. It was like the plane goes like.
Oh, Gary
Sourputz with the dub over in jolly old England. I'm gonna have to pay for some extra shipping to get him out something. So Gary, we'll be in touch as to what your prize will be. We'll work it out and then get it over to you. So exciting stuff. So we got that. And listen, we're starting again today. Yep. Okay, we're going to ask another trivia question today, and we're going to do the same exact thing at the end of the season, and then we'll probably do 1 or 2 in the off season as well.
We'll keep it going. We'll have some fun with it.
The light engine says 10 grand shipping, $10,000 for shipping. I wish I had known. If we had done this 2 weeks ago, I could have sent the gift over to my parents. They were over in London 2 weeks ago, but that's okay. So all right, let's get into some actual football here. The Patriots suck. They're terrible. And Mac Jones is just, it's as bad as it can get. I mean, it's worse than it can get because Mac Jones is terrible and you don't have anyone behind him. It's not even like, oh, we can put this guy in and like this guy can be exciting. Bailey Zappi is awful. He's awful. The Patriots have been trying to get rid of him all year long, and nobody will take him, number one, and they can't find anyone even close to good to replace Bailey Zappi, and so it's rough.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is that he does, seem like the best quarterback probably right now. That doesn't necessarily mean he's the guy who should be starting on Sundays from here on out. But man, like Zappi we know is bad. Greer we've known for a while in the NFL is bad. We haven't seen it here in New England, but there's a reason he was, available.
Yep.
Malik Cunningham, is he even a quarterback? Like this is where we're at right now. The whole room needs to be rebuilt. And I think looking at the future, regardless if they're drafting somebody, it's clear they don't even have a backup quarterback for next year. They need to add at least 2 quarterbacks to this room that they feel somewhat decent about.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. And so, that's one of those tough things. And, Light Engine mentioning Gronk, who is just such a dork. He's just such a dweeb. But nevertheless, talking about how Mac should request a release from the Patriots, which is just so insane to think that a guy on a rookie contract is going to walk into the Patriots and say, cut, like Bill Belichick would laugh in his face and tell him to go pound sand. There's no chance.
Trade him somewhere. That's the thing, is that he has, well, maybe not after this week, but in theory, Mac Jones has some trade value. So there's never a world where they're going to release him right now, and they can't trade him,
right?
Just because we're after the deadline. So Mac Jones is going to be on this team in some capacity and potentially starting games for at least 7 more weeks of football.
Yeah, that's crazy. So there's been some discussion about my jersey. It is in fact a white Curtis Martin, and you can see by the champion logo on the sleeve there that it is an original back from probably 1997, maybe 98. I think he left here in 98. So it was Jersey Day today at school, and so this was the jersey that I rocked to school today. So and I was like, I'm just gonna leave it on for the podcast. So
I love it. Yeah. By the way, when it comes to like Gronk and Mac requesting a release, I would be shocked if Mac Jones is on this team next year, just because if you're keeping Bill Belichick, you're, I think, kind of moving on from Mac Jones. I don't think the two of those guys can coexist. If you're bringing in a new coaching staff, they have no reason to stand by him. They didn't draft him. They're going to bring in somebody else and probably reset the leadership in some ways on this offense, even in the personnel. Like you want to reset the culture on this offense too right now, I think. Not that it has a bad culture, but a new staff's going to want their own guys there, and Mac's not one of them. So I fail to see many scenarios in which Mac Jones is on this team next year, and if he is, it's not going to be as a starter. It's going to be as a backup.
Yeah, and that's and for me, that's what it comes down to, right? Is that who's going to want him, right? Who's going to want him? And that's the hard thing.
Kyle Shanahan, maybe.
Maybe, right? Because in that offense, it fits well. But if you're coming here, if Bill Belichick is gone, right? If Bill Belichick is gone, what coach in their right mind is going to be like, oh, I can fix Mac Jones? It's crazy. You know what I mean? It's crazy. So also, Gary looks like he's in the chat. Gary, sir, you won the prize. You won the prize.
Yeah. You may have missed it. So if you're watching live, go back to the start there. 2.5 minutes in, and you'll see what we're talking about.
Yep.
You won our trivia prize.
Yeah, and shoot us I would say shoot me a DM on Twitter if you have. I think you have Twitter, Gary. Shoot me a DM on Twitter, or you can email me as well, or just whatever.
We'll find a way.
If you don't, I'll send you my email if you don't have it.
Yeah,
we'll find a way to connect, and I will. Instead of getting you a gift card to the pro shop, you won't be able to use that. I will pick up something of your choice at the gift shop and send it to you. So congrats. But that's the thing. I mean, look, and the discussion we need to really have is the discussion we actually have to have is, should Mac Jones start the rest of the season? Right. That's question number one. Question number two for me is an easy one, right? Is Mac Jones the quarterback here next year? Why? In what scenario? I can't imagine a scenario in which Mac Jones is the starting quarterback on this team. Seems insane that he would be the starting quarterback on this team next year, and B, really even on the team, it doesn't make sense. Why have that guy on your team? And listen, I do think, and I said this on the show on Sunday, and I tweeted this out as well. I do think he'll be a good backup for a while because he works hard. It seems like the players like him. And I know, he's done some dirty and chippy stuff in the past, but the players that he plays with seem to like him.
Yeah.
He does seem to work hard. He has a good attitude about it. He just can't play. He's just not that good.
Yeah.
And so, that to me screams backup quarterback.
Yeah. Well, I think the tough part too is you can't ask him to back up somebody you just drafted. You want a mentor in that role, and Mac's going to see himself as a competitor for the job.
Right.
And that just doesn't mesh. And he is not old enough or proven enough in this league to be a mentor to anybody right now.
Right.
He's not that guy. He kind of falls in that gap where he is somebody you bring in because you just want, somebody challenging for a backup job.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think Sam Darnold's out in San Francisco, and I think he's a free agent after this year. And I could see Mac Jones shifting right into that role if that's what San Francisco wants. Like that kind of role, I think makes sense where you're going behind a designated starter and you're just somebody learning and being a backup. But
right.
he's not a mentor. And the only way I think he's in New England is if the Patriots are picking in a spot in the draft where they know they're not getting a quarterback, and if there's a new coach, he comes in and sells Kraft on the idea of, I can fix this guy. And if that's what's going on, then I am going to be a little bit concerned about the direction we're going, because I don't think you're fixing Mac Jones at this point, and I think investing more resources in that direction is probably not a good idea. So,
right. Well, and I think your point makes sense, right? That Robert Kraft could believe that he's the guy, but even if he did, I think you have to look at what's happened here. And listen, if you're Robert Kraft and you want to 100% blame Bill Belichick, you can, right? If that's your prerogative. If you feel like Bill Belichick is 100% the problem, Mac Jones isn't the problem. But I think at this point, what you've seen is a broken quarterback, a quarterback that doesn't trust himself, that his mechanics are a disaster, just a disaster. And at the end of the game, they lost that Colts game. I mean, obviously the throw in the vicinity of Mike Gesicki is the worst throw I've ever seen, right? But that's not what's concerning to me. That's a really bad throw. Obviously, there's no excuse for it. It's terrible. What's more concerning to me are the plays down the other end of the field when he's got Demario Douglas wide open on an in route and he doesn't throw it to him. And on the same play, he's got Ramondre Stevenson in the flat wide open and can't get him the ball. And then he's got him wide open in the flat again another time, doesn't get it to him, and then two-hand kind of underhands it to him, floats it up in the air. If there had been anyone anywhere near Ramondre Stevenson, that's a pick six. And the guy's walking into the end zone, and we're looking at it saying, what the hell are you doing? And so, it's those decisions to me that are worse than the terrible throw to Hunter Henry in the end zone and the terrible throw towards Mike Gesicki that didn't even make the end zone. To me, where I look at it and say, what are we even talking about? What are we even talking about here? It's not salvageable. And I know Bailey Zappi's not that good. I get that. But I think Bill Belichick made a statement on Sunday by pulling Mac Jones at the end of the game. And there were a few people on Twitter that thought that was crazy that he pulled him and threw Bailey Zappi in cold. But I think the message was, we can't win with this guy. We can't do it.
No.
And so we got to try something else.
And that was, we've, I think at various points in the last 14 months here, 15 months, we've seen moments from Mac Jones that make you debate, should we put the backup in? Should we bench him? And that was probably the first play where all of the fan base has been united on, we got to get this guy out. Because it's just not working. You can't trust that. The guys around him can't trust that. And that's Andrew Callahan had an article where he was told by somebody in the locker room that 80% of the guys don't trust Mac anymore just to win ball games. And quite frankly, I can't blame them.
Right.
80% seems like it might
Well,
be, yeah. And it's not, this is nothing about Mac's character or leadership in the locker room or anything like that. I think it's just proven that when the situation around him isn't perfect, his game really cannot adapt to it. And that throw in the end zone, I mean, we didn't even really talk about it on Sunday, but there is no reason why the Patriots should have lost that ball game. They
right.
controlled the clock. They were pounding it on the ground. You get the missed field goal. You get that play unable to execute in the red zone. They should have won that game. They were, in a lot of ways, the better team. And that's kind of the theme here. How many games is it now where they've had the ball with a chance to take the lead late in the game? You got that one. You got the Washington game where you got the drop in the pick. You got the Eagles game and the Miami game earlier this season. And it's just been this recurring theme. And it does make you think if you had a different guy in that in the quarterback room, you got 1, 2, maybe even 3 more wins on the season, and you're in a different spot, which I think is a cause for optimism too. That's the spot you're trying to change. And if you hit on somebody, if you're able to do what the Texans have done with CJ Stroud next year, this is a team that could, win 8, 9 games next year and, start to turn things around in a hurry just because you get that change at that spot. The flip side is it can still get worse because it can always get worse in the NFL.
Well, and that's right. And so it's like, of course, CJ Stroud ended up being great. They got a brand new coach in there. The culture's changed. Everything is looking great for them. Meanwhile, Carolina moved up to draft their quarterback. They have a brand new coach in there. Things are looking terrible. They're awful, right? They're a terrible team. Now they don't have a lot of talent. And Houston, I guess, is a more talented team than they are. But like Nico Collins hadn't done anything before this year. Noah Brown was a castaway from Dallas, right? Like it's not like they had a ton of talent. Dalton Schultz was another castaway from Dallas, right? So it's one of those things.
Their guys, they developed the guys that were there, and they made some good free agent signings. And
look, the coach has everything to do with it, right? I think DeMeco Ryans is a very good head coach, and I think Frank Reich is frankly not a very good head coach, and I think that has a bunch of things to go. I think that has a lot to do with it. And Matt says they drafted Tank Dell too, which is true, right? But like, look at Washington, and I know Washington's not the perfect team, and they're not great, but like Sam Howell got drafted after Bailey Zappi got drafted. I don't know if he's the guy. He's not a number 2 quarterback. He's not a top 10 quarterback in the NFL or anything like that. But he's fun to watch. He's got a heck of an arm. He's getting better every year, or he's getting better now in his second year than he was last year. That's a guy that they might try to build around, where it looks like, hey, they might have hit on this guy, and they got him in the 4th round, right? And so like that's not but like Russell Wilson was drafted in the 3rd round. Jalen Hurts was drafted in the 2nd round, right? Like. So some of these guys, where you're looking at it like, oh, okay, these guys are like good players. Oh, sorry, 5th round for Sam Howell. Thank you, Matt. But like, so, some of these guys are good players. They're not necessarily getting drafted in the 1st round. Now, that doesn't mean that the Patriots are just going to magically get someone in the 1st round. And like, so what's funny is that all this press is around Jaden Daniels. Oh, they got Jaden Daniels, and Jaden Daniels is great. They can get him in the 2nd round. And it's like, well, wait a second. Hold on now. If Jaden Daniels is so good, and we can tell he's good, and the NFL thinks he's good, he's not going in the 2nd round. So, that
said, Lamar Jackson did last until pick 32.
Very true.
And I was listening to, I'm just going to throw this podcast on everybody's radar right now. If you're not listening to it, the Prospects to Pros show on the Athletic Football feed, it's a great draft prep show. They were talking about Jaden Daniels today in particular, and they mentioned he's a guy who could go top 20, and it wouldn't surprise him. He could last until the end of round 2, and it wouldn't surprise him. Because we don't know how teams are going to evaluate him. And some teams are going to look at him like a Lamar Jackson type guy, potentially. And others are going to say, hey, he took a while to develop and the accuracy is not always there. And the mental side isn't always there. And, the thing Lamar Jackson had going for him is that he's a very sturdy athlete. And I don't know if Jaden Daniels is quite that guy. And Jaden Daniels took longer to break out. He's in his 5th year. Lamar Jackson won a Heisman, I believe, as a sophomore in college. So
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, different levels there. He's an interesting prospect. But going back to the draft stuff, like Tank Dell, it's a guy who was round 3, round 4, something like that. Nico Collins was round 3. Noah Brown, free agent.
Right.
Dalton Schultz, free agent. You can build a decent receiving core with day 2 and day 3 picks if you hit on them and if you develop them.
Right.
Third round for Dell and Nico, and that's really good job for Houston. I also think it's worth pointing out, if we're talking about the next head coach here in New England, that my tendency here is to say you need an offensive mind. It's going to be a new quarterback. It's going to be a new offense. But you just mentioned Frank Reich and DeMeco Ryans. One of these guys is a linebacker coach and a defensive guy as head coach. The other one's supposedly an offensive mastermind. Well, which offense do we feel better about right now?
Yeah.
So one led by the defensive coach, and that kind of brings me back to Gerard Mayo and what things will potentially look like with him in the building. I think he's the type of guy where if he left and was really good elsewhere, you'd feel really bad about it.
That I agree with. So the hard thing for me is that what I want is I want a forward thinker. I want someone that thinks outside the box. I want someone that's going to build his team differently than what the Patriots are doing and kind of bring them into the 21st century. The Patriots haven't done that, right? I think the Texans have done a nice job of doing that. I think that the Panthers have done that a little bit, but not like Frank Reich's kind of an old school guy. He's not necessarily like groundbreaking, he's not doing different things offensively than other people are doing. And so he's not on the cutting edge of things. I'll put it to you that way, right? So I don't know what kind of guy Gerard Mayo is. I don't know. Is he a new age guy? Is he going to try all these new age things? Maybe, and maybe not. Maybe he wants to do things the Patriot way. Maybe he wants to, I don't know. And I'm not saying the Patriot way doesn't work because that's silly. But, I think for me, I want a change. I want to see if, hey, maybe if we just mix things up completely, that will change things and will change things for the better. And maybe it won't. Maybe it'll be a disaster and it'll be a dumpster fire and it's like, oh my God, they hired Ben Johnson and it's a mess. But like, I don't know. That's like I want something different.
Well, this is a different sport, but I think there's still some relevance here. I read this years ago too, so I can't even cite where it's from. But I know in hockey has a really, really high rate of coaches getting fired. And immediately, the team gets better the next year. In large part because, hockey, it's the same puck, same 5 guys on the ice. There's not as many like strategic advances there, and a lot of it is, teaching and emotional, the way you connect in the locker room.
Right.
And nothing is more obvious with that than you look at last season. You've got the Bruins who fired their coach, and they go on to have the best regular season in NHL history or whatever it was in franchise history. And the guy who they fired goes on to become the Stanley Cup champion elsewhere in a situation that really worked out for both sides. Yeah. It wasn't that he was a bad coach. It's that things stopped working and you need a change in a voice. And in some ways, that's a little bit what it feels like in New England at this point. I think Bill Belichick is still very good at what he does, but I also think you need that breath of fresh air in the room. Slightly different locker room style. Guy who's going to approach the players slightly differently. Probably a more modern approach and more data-driven approach on offense. I think one of the things I really enjoyed this weekend, I keep coming back to the Lions because I love their strategy, but them being more aggressive than the computer suggested on 4th down. I loved that. It's 4th and 5 in field goal range, and they're running the ball and they're getting it. Right. And that kind of, we're going to have, they said after the game that they knew they were going to be more aggressive because of what they saw from the Chargers. And they coached up their players to say, hey, we're going to be aggressive in these spots. And these are the plays we're going to use. And we have confidence in you to do it. So let's get this down so we can do it. And they went into the game and they did it. It was a huge part of why they won that game. And I like that approach. I want a coach that's going to be very confident in the offense and willing to be aggressive. Yeah,
I agree. I couldn't agree more. And that's all we're asking for, right? And again, Leiden is talking about people getting benched and what does that look like, right? And so, and we'll talk about Jack Jones by the end of the show here, but Jack Jones, I think is a different situation than necessarily the way you manage players. But I just think that, handling them with kid gloves a little bit is needed, But I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not
It's
sure. You know.
yeah. And I don't well, this is where I said you need a breath of fresh air, I think too. I don't think the way that Bill Belichick handles it is bad. I just think that it might be you might get more out of some of these guys with a
Yeah.
slightly different approach. I think his
Right.
approach works. You probably just need a little bit more veteran leadership in some of the rooms, like in meeting rooms from players who are able to execute stuff and kind of set that standard. It's easier to have this hard standard for players when you got a guy like Tom Brady in there who is both living up to the standards and very willing to take a punishment when he
Mhm.
doesn't live up to them despite his stature. That sets a tone in a way you can't do when you don't have anybody like that on offense. I mean, who are your offensive leaders right now? There's David Andrews, who counts.
Right.
Hendrick Bourne, who's a guy who has had issues with the coaches as recently as last year.
Mhm.
Hunter Henry, who's good but doesn't seem that vocal. And Mac Jones, who, I mean, he
Thanks.
plays on the field isn't good enough to be a true leader in that sense. And I think that just makes it hard to consistently have that approach for discipline.
Yeah, and I also think too, like, you know, it's not necessarily that they don't want to be punished, that they don't want to get yelled at. I think that they want to the other part of it too, right? The other part of it too is that I think one of the things that, so listening to Scar, right? And Scar talk about it, and he says, look, these guys are professionals. What they want to do is to be the best that they possibly can at what they're doing. That's what they want to do. And so if they know what you're doing is going to help them be the best that they can be, they'll eat it up. They'll listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care if you yell and scream at them. They don't care. It doesn't matter to them. It's about, are you going to put them in the best position for them to succeed and for them to look as good as they can? Because the better they look and the better they play, the more they get made. The more they get paid. I'm sorry. And so those are the things for me that, like, that's what they care about. Well, these last few years, you start to wonder, am I getting put in the best position? Am I playing the right position for me? Is the coaching style helping me? Are they putting me in? So, like, all of those things are the questions, right? Like, those are now the things that we're starting to ask. Well, wait a second. How are these things, am I in the best position to succeed, right? And Marte Mapu, who we've brought up 100 times on here, and Taylor Kyles wrote about it today for CLNS. But, like, to me, that's the number one guy I point at. There's Marte Mapu should have never been a safety. That's stupid. Why are you drafting that guy to be a safety? That's dumb. The guy hits like a freaking machine, and you're going to just put him back at deep safety? That's crazy. He gives you the athleticism of a 21st century defense at linebacker. He hits hard. He has linebacker instincts, and the athleticism that he has gives you an advantage at the linebacker spot. Listen, is he fast enough to play deep safety? He is, but he's not like a plus athlete at deep safety. He's a normal athlete at deep safety. And so, like, that's the type of stuff for me that I look at it and I'm like, what are we doing? Why are, like, what are we, it doesn't make any sense. And that's the stuff for me that I can't do it. I can't do it.
Yeah. And you can live with those decisions when they're winning. But now that they're not winning, you got a little bit more of a microscope. And quite frankly, you got more column inches right now, to use the old terminology, to talk about stuff like that. If they're
Right.
winning games, nobody's writing an article about how they're using the rookie safety who's fifth on the depth chart, who they drafted in the third round. When
Yeah.
you're losing games, there's a lot of room to talk about that because you don't have any of the nice puff pieces in there or anything.
That's correct.
It's just going to get more of that attention anyway, naturally. So, yeah, and I liked the Mapu pick at the time. I haven't loved the way they've developed him. I think he's been mediocre when he's on the
Yeah.
field. And you look at some of the other guys on the board, and it's, you wish they could have gone in other ways there if we're talking about impact for this season. And I think it's pretty clear, too, from how they approach that draft, especially with that pick, that I think all parties involved here thought there was more time. He was, in some ways, a developmental guy, and you're drafting him with an eye on next season because you think you've got the quarterback and you think you've gotten the offense, and it doesn't matter if he's good this year because he's going to be good next year. and
Right.
he'll be a rotational guy. And it's things happen fast.
It's true. It's very true. So, by the way,
And
Josh McDaniels. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, TJ Pindar says, I think Mapu came in lighter than advertised. It was reported at some point that the Patriots had asked him to slim down. I believe. I can't say that for a fact, but I'm pretty sure I saw that at some point because he's definitely slimmer than what he was at the Senior Bowl. And I can't imagine that would be the case unless the Patriots wanted him at that weight. Now, if he slimmed down on his own, I think that's a different story. But
right.
I question the team not telling him to bulk up.
Yeah, well, right. I agree. By the way, welcome in Josh McDaniels. Welcome to the chat. Appreciate it. And the guy spamming the chat talking about Josh McDaniels, which he's not solving any problems around here. I think it's been pretty clear that he's not head coach material.
No.
So no offense, Josh.
We've talked about that on here too. It's just astonishing to watch that man repeat the same mistakes. Like the exact same mistakes, beat for beat. So I hope he figures it out.
I really thought he took that job in Vegas and he was contrite and he talked about he learned from his mistakes and he made a ton of mistakes. And he was like, I couldn't believe how open and honest he was about the mistakes he made in Denver. And I'm like, okay, here's a guy that's learned. I'm like, he's going to succeed.
He gets it.
He gets it. He understands. And he does exactly the same thing. And you're like, what the hell, dude? It was wild.
Yeah.
So,
I know we're going to move on here in a second, probably talk about Jack Jones and all that. I have one more stat for you before we do that. We'll end this segment on a somewhat positive note. This is from Arjun Menon, who does a lot of advanced stat stuff. He put this graph out on Twitter yesterday showing the net success rate for every team in the NFL this year. So success rate is just ratio of positive plays to negative plays.
Yep.
And that offense and defense. Patriots are 17th in that.
Look at that.
That right in the middle of the pack in the NFL. And I think that's what we've talked about all year. They can do a lot of good things. They just never, except for that Bills game, do great things in that one play to Pharaoh Brown. Like those are the two things. And when it's only ever good things and never more than that, or just fine, then you're still going to have a hard time. They're the first team that is negative in success rate at 17. Right in front of them at 16 is Washington, and right behind them is Las Vegas. Two teams that they lost to.
Yep. And so I just that's what makes it difficult, right? Is that you see stuff like that and you're like, you're right there and you just can't close the deal, right? And and part of it's coaching for sure, and part of it's execution. Like you're there, but they also can't close the deal, right? They make good plays and then they get down to the red zone and they stop making good plays and they make bad plays, right? And so maybe not bad enough to be turnovers all the time, but definitely certainly not good plays.
No, and they just don't. I mean, they don't score. Like the difference between the amount of yards the Patriots have and the number of points they have is almost sickening to look at.
Crazy. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get into that. We're going to come back. I do want to talk about where I want to see, if assuming Brady and Mac Jones leave, where I want to see those two next year. And then we will talk about Jack Jones as well. All right. But first, a quick ad here. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. MA 21 plus and present in Mass. Hope is here. First online real money wager only. $5 pre-game money line wager required. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. GamblingHelpLineMA.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So I did tease before that, kind of where I'd like to see Bill Belichick and Mac Jones go. And Mac, I think I would like to see Mac get a shot somewhere else, right? And I know Bama Charlie's in the chat, I assume, is a Bama fan and is a Mac Jones fan, and wants to see Mac Jones do well and believes that he will. And I think there's a possibility that he will if he's in the right scenario. He has to be in the right situation. He has to have a ton of talent around him. He has to have a really good offensive line in front of him. And if he has the perfect scenario, there's a chance that he can be successful again. I guess San Francisco is the best option for that. Do I think he's better than Brock Purdy? No, but is there a chance that he gets out there and all of a sudden, like, he fixes some of the crap that he's doing, and they're like, "Oh my God, you might actually be better than Brock Purdy"? There's a chance, at least. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's at least a possibility. As far as Bill Belichick is concerned, and this is the big thing, and someone had mentioned earlier, and I don't know who it was, and I'm not scrolling back, but someone talked about how much bigger of an icon Brady is after what's happened here in New England. And although I agree with that, all I want is for Bill Belichick to take a job somewhere else and win another championship. That's all I want. I want it so bad, because what happens now is that people have dunked all over Bill Belichick, and they've said, "Yup, no, he's terrible, and he's this, and he's that, and he blah, 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 blah," all this stuff, right? Like, and so, fine, I get it. Like, he's gotten himself into this situation. The coaching clearly isn't up to par. The, talent evaluation and the talent development isn't up to par. So, like, all of those things aren't working. But still, he's still the greatest coach of all time. And I would love for him to go somewhere where he can show that, where he can prove to people that he still is the greatest coach of all time. And to me, that place is LA. And I know, Matt, you have something to say about this, because I know how you feel about LA. But what I'll say about LA is that when you look at the options that he has, Washington, probably the Giants, right? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe Carolina gets nuts and fires Frank Reich. Probably not, but maybe. Arizona, maybe. Didn't there? No. Arizona's got a new coach this year, right? Yeah, Gannon's never mind. Forget it. There's not a ton of options out there, right? Maybe Vegas, theoretically, right? Depending on what they want to do with Antonio Pierce. So, like, but out of the realistic options of him getting a job, the best team by far is LA. And,
I agree with that.
And that offense is pretty good. Now, listen, if you were going to do a dude off, right? Dude offs, by the way, aren't the way you win championships, right? But if we're going to do a dude off and talk about the best players on all the teams, LA's got the dudes, right? They got the guys that you're like, well, okay. That doesn't mean jack during the actual game, but they have some dudes over there that you would think, if you could coach them up, could at least do something. I don't know.
Well, the thing with the Chargers is that, especially on defense, they have guys that have, like, name power who just haven't, like, played like that. Like, you got Bosa and Mack there on the defensive line, which sounds amazing, and they have, like, no pass rush. Like, it's just not right. It's not working, and they can't. Like, their run defense has not been good. And Derwin James is not good. I don't trust PFF ratings that much, but I did check them out on PFF today because I was curious, and it's just like a whole bunch of guys who were solidly mediocre with, like, 3 really good players. And the Chargers linebackers are awful. So I have a feeling if Bill Belichick was there, he would, overhaul that. I'd be curious to see what he would do out there. Right. I think there are 3 real landing spots here: Washington, Carolina, and LA. And of those, I think LA is the best landing spot. I think Washington is also interesting. I think Washington has enough pieces and enough capital to make something happen in 2 years. Depends on what Bill's time span here would be. If he's trying to get, a bunch of wins in 2 seasons to pass the record, LA is probably the spot to do that. Yeah. You get the quarterback with it, but And I'd love to see what he do with that defense. I also think it would be really, really, really funny because Asante Samuel Jr. is on that team. And if the Chargers traded for Bill Belichick after all the stuff Asante Samuel has said, the comments on Twitter alone would be worth the price of admission on that one.
Yeah, I agree.
And then I think selfishly, you want him to go to like Carolina because if you're getting draft capital back, like you feel better about the draft capital coming from there.
The other part of it though is that you have to assume you're not getting this year's first round draft pick. First of all, Carolina doesn't have their first round draft pick this year, but you have to assume if he's going somewhere like Washington or Green Bay, someone in the World's Greatest Two pointed out could be an option. If he's going somewhere like that, or the Giants, certainly, I can't imagine they're getting this year's first round pick, right? Like the Giants aren't sending a top 5 pick to the Patriots for Bill Belichick. I can't imagine them doing that.
Well, and I think the Giants are tough too because they have Dable, who's like a former Belichick guy, and like I feel like the Giants and the Raiders are in the same spot where you're not going to fire a former Belichick guy and then go get Belichick. I don't think the owners are going to be on board with that.
I agree with you there. So we'll see ultimately what happens. But my dream scenario would be Belichick leaving and winning somewhere else. Now, maybe he doesn't win a championship, but really winning, taking a team. And LA to me is the perfect spot because LA has been such, even when they were in San Diego, they're such a loser franchise. Like they play well. You think they're going to be good, and they just stink every freaking year. Every year.
It's really funny. I mean, everybody knows the 2010 Chargers, who finished with the number 1 offense and the number 1 defense, didn't even make the playoffs because their special teams were that bad.
It's unbelievable.
One of the funniest stats,
the best ones ever.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the number 1 and not even make the playoff. Thinking about not winning a playoff game, didn't even make the playoffs. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And you've got, did they fire Schottenheimer after 2006? Is that when they did it?
I can't remember, but that 2006 game was crazy. That team was 14-2 and lost to the Patriots in the first round.
And some of the decisions, like if you go 14-2 and lose the way they did to the Patriots, like that's fluky, and you should not be firing your head coach over that. That's ridiculous. So yeah, they've been snake bitten by their own bad decisions there for quite a long time, which I think moving to LA is probably in some ways one of those bad decisions.
In their defense, Marty Schottenheimer just couldn't win anything. And so, and by the way, Pinga's right. Like his legacy should be set in stone, and it should be that he is the greatest coach of all time. I agree 100% with that. That's not the case, right? That's not the case. That's not what people. That's not when you talk about the 24/7 news factory, right? And everyone screaming into the void about everything. There are people out there saying Bill Belichick stinks, and this is proof that it was always Brady and never Belichick and all this other stuff. And again, if he goes somewhere and is successful somewhere else, you can point to his GM skills and say the GM skills in New England weren't up to par. But what you wouldn't be able to do is point to his coaching skills and say, well, I mean, he went to – because you could play the same game with Brady, right? He went to a team that had 35 turnovers from the quarterback spot alone and won 7 games, which is insane to think about. So – it's one of those things that I just think as a Patriots fan, as a lifelong Patriots fan, which makes me a Bill Belichick fan, I want to see Bill Belichick go somewhere else and win. Just like I wanted Tom Brady to go somewhere else and win because he's Tom Brady. I love Tom Brady, and I want the best for him. He deserves the best. I'm happy that when he went to Tampa Bay, now there is no question. There's no question that he is the greatest player of all time. No question. Yeah. Anyone that was saying that when he was here is quiet about that now because he proved them wrong, right? And Belichick has an opportunity to do the same thing for Team X somewhere else. And, I think LA gives him the best chance, but maybe not, but I want to see that happen somewhere else.
It'd be nice to see. And, even if he doesn't win a ton, being able to see him pass the record, I think he's earned that.
I'd
love to see it. And it's, honestly, I think we've had our issues here in New England. I wouldn't even be all that upset if he stayed. I don't think he's going to, and I think it's time. But if he stayed, I think he could give him a new shot in New England in a fresh 4 years. I think he could make it work. It's just, I think there's too many questions about him being the right guy for the job that you're going to have issues with the locker room. And it's just one of those times where I think it's time on both sides for a fresh start, which in some ways is exactly how I felt when Brady left too. I felt like that was the time. I was okay with that. And yeah, I'm curious to see. And there's the Jack Jones of it all too. I know we want to talk about that here.
Yes.
And I know I think there's fair criticisms of drafting him in the first place, but when it comes to Bill's discipline, I think this was 100% the correct thing to do, especially when you look at the way Jack Jones took to social media after the fact to completely deny all of the things that happened, which is what happened last year when he got suspended by the team too. And you just, especially when a guy isn't even playing well, you can't have him refusing to take accountability for his actions, assuming that these reports were correct, which I think we have no reason to believe that they weren't, that they were incorrect. So just a tough situation. And you draft a guy based on talent, and yet again here, it seems like an endless string since they picked like Gronk of a history of drafting guys who either have injury issues or off-field problems where it just doesn't work out for you.
Right. Well, TJ's asking why didn't they trade him before the deadline? And look, you're not wrong. They probably should have traded him before the deadline, but I don't think they thought they needed to get rid of him. I think that's kind of that's kind of where they're at, is like they thought, okay, things are going to be all right. Maybe he's not 100% bought in, but then all of a sudden they were like, oh crap. And when they realized it, it was, right after the trade deadline, and now what are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, and you look at the difference between how the JC and the Jack situations were handled. JC was basically, hey, you're a veteran. You should know better. You're sitting. Jack, it was, hey, you're young. We want to give you a chance. We're going to give you the opportunity to bounce back. And by all accounts here, Jack did not handle it well. And, the reports of him on the sideline, not talking to his teammates, not up with the defense and moping about. And, we're trying to establish a team culture here. When you're losing, that culture can go, and you got to nip things like that in the bud. You can't have that attitude around and expect to be a winning team. You just can't do it. You can't win with that.
Well, that's
yeah. And you shouldn't have traded him at the deadline. You didn't know he was going to do this. If you knew if he had a magic ball or whatever and could see into the future, then not only would you have traded him at the deadline, you wouldn't have drafted him in the first place. But that's how this thing works. And I went back and I looked at the Athletics consensus draft board from 2022. And Jack Jones, 235th, taken 121st by the New England Patriots. They overdrafted 3 guys in that draft, and none of them look like they were worth where they drafted them. They all look like they were about fairly rated.
Right. The only thing I'll say about Jack Jones, I know he was drafted in the 4th round, 121, but for me personally, he's a guy that had the talent of a 2nd round pick.
Yeah.
And I think that the Patriots had drafted Marcus Jones already, and they looked at it and said, we're gonna look at this situation, and we're gonna say, all right, are there some off-field concerns? Yes, there are. But we've spoken to some people, right? We've spoken to Herm Edwards. We feel confident that he's past that point, and we're going to take a shot at him in the 4th round. And again, didn't work out for them, but I don't necessarily blame them for doing it, because you're taking a guy that's talented that has some off-field concerns. Tyreek Hill was a guy that was talented that had some off-field concerns. That one worked out okay. Obviously, very different players, right? But there are guys that get drafted every year that have some off-field concerns. Travis Kelce's a guy that had off-field concerns, right? That was drafted. That turned out to be pretty good, right? So, and again, not that he was ever going to be that type of player, but the point is that you have a talented player that is going down the draft board because of something that happened off the field, not necessarily on the field. And so you take a shot at him, and it didn't work out, and it blew up in their face. And it is what it is, right? But for me personally, I understand where they went with it. Now, maybe we can make the argument that they shouldn't have done it. And I think that it's a completely fine argument. And there are probably teams that didn't even have him on their draft board at all because of what happened off the field. And it's tough. I'll tell you what, man, as a teacher, I've been a teacher 12, I don't know, 15 years or whatever. All those teachers out there, you know kids just like Jack Jones. Oh yeah. Oh, we know those kids. The kids that are always causing trouble. They're always the one in the middle of all the scuffles, but they never did anything wrong. And not only did they never do anything wrong, they also get upset when you say they did something wrong. Now you're like, then they're like, well, what do you mean? I would never do that. I can't believe you would say it. And so, oh my God, I have those kids. And those are the most annoying and worst kids because they're doing it. They know they're doing it. And yet they stick to the story that they're not doing it. And then they get upset at you for accusing them of doing it when you know they did it. It's awful. And that's who Jack Jones is. I saw him tweet that out about nothing happened this night. I'm like, oh my God, that's who Jack Jones is. Like he's my nightmare child. He's my nightmare child in my class who I deal with all the time.
Yep. And I think he's talented. And if he figures it out at any point, he's going to be very good in the NFL. I just, time was up for him in New England. He came in, I think I'd said this before, he came into the NFL kind of with 2 strikes already.
Yeah.
And he's gotten 3 since being here in one team.
It's not good.
So,
not good.
And that somebody had mentioned the connections to Antonio Pierce there. I'm guessing that's why the Raiders picked him up.
Yeah.
It makes a ton of sense. And hopefully for Jack, this helps him out. It seems like all of his problems have been, dumb stuff. He's not malicious at this point. He's not trying to hurt people. He had some issues with that and, robbing up the Panda Express or whatever it was when he was in college. Right. And it seems like he's past that. He's not doing things like that, but it's just, the dumb stuff. And I hope he figures it out for his own sake.
Yeah, it's tough. And it's, and Ed's talking about it too. And you mentioned it. The 2022 draft class looks like one of the worst draft classes we've ever seen. And the Patriots have had historically bad draft classes lately, but like the Cole Strange pick was like, what are we doing? And look, I like Cole Strange. I think there's a chance that he's a very good player, but like a guard, you drafted Ted Karras' replacement at number 29. Like that's not good. That's not good value.
Should have just signed Joe Thuney. Like that's
right.
And the whole 2022 offseason is one that I think is kind of going to be the turning point here because you have a draft that it's just complete awful. Like there's really not a whole lot of redeeming things to take from it whatsoever. And it's the offseason where you don't set your quarterback up for success. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because for as bad as some of it was, I do think it's a blessing in disguise in that I'm of the opinion Mac Jones probably was never going to be the guy. And he had a 10-game hot streak as a rookie. He got figured out after the bye, and that was probably it. And bottoming out is probably better for the franchise because you have to move on and you can pick up the draft ammo to do it. But obviously it would have been better if they just drafted a good quarterback, which I honestly, in 2021, it's been tough finding these guys. And,
it's not good.
It's a tough position to be in. I mean, in theory too, you could have said that you could have traded up for somebody, but even then, I mean, there's one good quarterback out of that draft right now, and even he's been very, very, very good, but he hasn't even lived quite up to the hype yet.
Well, right, and that's really what it comes down to, right? Is that you look at it and just say, like, realistically, who the hell would you even draft it? And so I just that's the hard stuff, right? That's where you second guess and you say, what did you do here and what did you do here, and like. A lot of it comes from the fact that, like, well, just don't get rid of the guys you had. Sign Joe Thuney. Sign Ted Karras, for God's sakes. Like, do any of that. Don't don't trade Shaq Mason. Like, all of those different things are possibilities. I just don't. It doesn't make any sense to me. So.
Yeah, and it's clear this team kind of had the core of its identity was a rushing attack, and keep Joe Thuney if you're going to do that. But I don't know. Yeah, it's just. Right. It's tough. Well, and I know I've gotten some pushback for saying he was fine before McDaniels left, and I get that. I've said it on here before, and I'll say it again. That Indy game coming out of the bye seems like such a turning point in hindsight. The way the whole team acted, to be honest, in that game. But Mac in particular did not look good that night and got fooled by stuff. And it seems like teams have followed that blueprint, to a T. It's just Keep
Yep.
linebackers underneath the middle of the field to take away anything there. Dare Mac to beat you on the outside. He doesn't have the arm strength or the anticipation to do it, and that's the ball game.
Right. Well, and it's I mean, look, they were never gonna beat Buffalo in the playoffs.
No.
But like, you just look at the way Mac played in that playoff game, and you just
and it's
like
it was the
not
same
good
thing
enough.
with that game is that Buffalo marched down the field and they score on the first drive. It's that all right, they landed the first punch.
Yeah.
And it's all right, can we punch back? And the Patriots do. They move the ball and they get themselves in the scoring range. Mac throws it into the end zone, isn't able to put it in the right spot. Safety comes over and picks it off. And next time you're on the field, it's 14-0 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And the game's essentially over at that point already. And you've been on the field once as an offense. And that's kind of, I feel like that sums up the Mac Jones era here in New England right there, that sequence.
Yeah, and I also think too, like as soon as they tried to open things up for him, I think it was a very neutered offense in 2021, where it was you're a rookie,
play
we're not
action.
going to put too much on your plate, we're going to make things easy for you, right? We're going to make things very simple for you.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they've opened things up for him, as soon as they've made him think and gotten him more, then that's the way it goes, right? And then you see what happens. And look, we can say that Bill O'Brien's not a good offensive coordinator, which I don't believe, but that's okay. We can say Matty P wasn't a good offensive coordinator, which I do believe, right? But like at the end of the day, it's about the decisions that your quarterback makes and what he can do, right? And I think what you saw is Bailey Zappi go in and play well. And why did Bailey Zappi go in and play well? Because they ran the same neutered offense they ran in 2021, where they said, you're not making decisions. We're running a billion play action passes. You're not even going to look. You're just going to throw it to the first option. And if he's not there, throw the friggin' ball away. Like it's just not. We're not taking any chances to that. So
and it was a whole lot of we're playing teams with bad quarterbacks and we're content to run the ball and we're going to run the ball and then do play action off of it. And we're going to ask Mac to do a couple spread things and do like the one area where he's been good has been with the no huddle and the spread concepts and stuff, which he was good at and has been good at, I think, this whole time.
Yeah.
The one area where I think he's at his best. And the second that they played like real good teams that were healthy, because they played Tennessee and Cleveland, but his rookie year, but those teams weren't healthy when they played them.
Right.
And when they started playing good defenses and the scheme had to be more advanced than just run the ball and set up play action, it wasn't working. And Max, in a long, long list of quarterbacks who have this exact same story of they look good when you can protect them and make it easy because they're not bad at what they do. They got to the NFL for a reason. And the second it gets more complex, just doesn't always work for guys.
Yeah, exactly. And so long story short for me, next year, I don't want the same old. I don't. Now, listen, if you're rehiring Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft feels that that's the way it goes, I'm not going to be happy about it, but like, it is what it is, right? And if Robert Kraft's saying I'm sticking with Bill Belichick no matter what, and he's getting the wins record and blah, 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 and I'm going to keep trotting him out, I don't agree with it. It's not what I would do, but he's the owner, and that's his call, right? I think they should move on from Bill Belichick. That's my opinion. And I think when you move on from Bill Belichick, I want a full change. I don't want Gerard Mayo in there as the head coach. I don't want Josh Mayo's back as the offensive coordinator. I don't want Bill O'Brien back as the offensive coordinator. I want a full change. If Gerard Mayo doesn't get a head coaching job and wants to stay on as DC, I'm okay with that because I think he's done a pretty good job there. I think him and Steve have done a nice job as defensive coordinator. Now, will Steve stay if his father leaves? Probably not. I don't know. You know what I mean? So those are all things that we don't know, right? We don't have the answers to those things. But for me, I just feel like if you're letting go of Bill Belichick, I don't want a Bill Belichick disciple to take over because we're at this point right now where we're in this position because of the Bill Belichick philosophy, right? And what we're doing and whatever they're using to evaluate talent and progress talent, right? Yeah. And so that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and I mostly agree. I don't hate the idea of Mayo staying. If Mayo stays, though, I think you want a GM who's something of a fresh face. I think with how bad 2022 has turned out to be, Matt Groh is probably not staying around.
That's correct.
I don't think he's bad. I think, he still has learning to do, and he's young, and he's not the guy you want right now. I think you want some guy with some experience. Adam Peters is a name I've seen get thrown around. He's in San Francisco. He has experience in New England. That's where he started, but he has a lot of experience since leaving New England. And I think that's probably a type of guy who'd be a good hire. And if you're going to do that, and then just you're probably resetting a lot of the offense and letting Drodman take over. You reset a lot on offense, and you go from there. Other than that, it's outside hire and tear it all down. And also, just to address one comment about, the offensive line being trash, the wide receivers being trash, the offensive coordinator being trash, but you're blaming Mac. I think you should go back and listen to some of our older episodes of this show, because we have been very critical of all of the things that you have mentioned for a long time. I think a lot of things on this offense are just subpar by NFL standards. I don't think they are. I honestly think there are players on this team who can be in winning football teams, but you just can't have this many players who are at this level and expect to win games. And that's basically in every single position on offense.
Right. Well, and that's
running back. They got two good running backs. I like the running backs.
They do. And I think that's really kind of what it comes down to for me is like, even if you think Mac Jones can be the guy somewhere, he's not the guy here. He's not. We've gotten to the point right now where he's not the guy here. That ship has sailed. If we're talking about the same thing with Belichick, I still think Belichick can be a really good head coach. I don't think it's going to work here anymore. And I feel the same way about Mac Jones. And again, maybe Mac goes somewhere else and proves us wrong, and he's incredible somewhere else, and he wins a Super Bowl, and he's like, is a Pro Bowl player and all this other stuff. I don't necessarily see that when I see his game, but there's certainly a possibility that happens. But I don't. Fine, that's great, good for him. But that's not going to happen here. And I think we're at the point where we need to accept that that's not going to happen here, right? And yes, do they need a new offensive line? 100%. Yep, 100%. You need a new offensive line. I would re-sign Mike Onwenu. I would leave City So at right guard, and I'd leave Cole Strange at left guard.
And I think
is David Andrews going to be back at center? I don't know. Is Trent Brown going to be back at left tackle? I don't know. You don't have a backup for Trent Brown.
No. Connor McDermott has been serviceable as a backup, but he's not a solution. He's a Band-Aid.
Correct.
And I think this is where also you look to the draft, and it's I don't really have an answer for you on who I think they should take. And I'm going to be honest, I may not have an answer up through the draft, because I think there's a lot of good players up there, and I think not messing it up is more important than getting any specific guy. You just can't have a bad player there. But if it's, let's say, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a guy who's, hits the NFL right away and is a Pro Bowl level receiver from day one. Well, if you got a guy like that, you can live with this offensive line for another year. You can make that work because you got a playmaker who can compensate for some of those things. And if you're drafting a guy at tackle, all right, well, that can help out some of your other issues. Although I will say, I found this kind of funny. This is Trent Brown's highest graded year in his career, according to PFF. This is the best season he's put together. So I don't hate the idea of bringing him back. Because he's cheap. But
if he's cheap.
Yeah, if. But yeah, I think not messing up that pick is the most important thing, and get somebody who's a difference maker in some capacity, because it makes the rest of the team building easier to do. And you go from there. It's unless they luck into a quarterback on day 2 or day 3 next year, or sign somebody and he ends up being really good for you out of nowhere. This isn't a 1-year fix. You're going to have at least 2 drafts here before you're starting to think about playoffs again. Yeah. And that's if you're hitting on a quarterback. So it's going to take a little bit of time, and getting guys who can be foundational blocks is the next step.
100%. And I think what it comes down to is that you can have the quarterback, or you can have playmakers, but if you don't have the quarterback eventually, none of it matters, right? For years, DeAndre Hopkins, incredible. For years, he was on the Texans and they sucked because they didn't have a quarterback. Now they got to the playoffs. Bill O'Brien got them to the playoffs because, he kind of pieced things together, but they never were really competitive in a real sense, right? Sure, you made the playoffs, but that was just for show. That's not real, right? And so I think that's, that to me can be part of it, where you look at it and say okay, yeah, sure, we can like win 8 games and maybe like compete for the 7th seed or something like that. Or if the AFC East tanks, maybe we can win the division theoretically, right? But like, what good is that, right? And so that's the hard thing for me, is that like that doesn't help you. Now, if you're 100% sold on Caleb Williams and Drake May, and you end up with a 3rd pick, and you look at Marvin Harrison Jr. and say, that guy's the best player available, we got to take him. Take him. Fine. I got no problem with that. But if you're at 2, I have a hard time taking Marvin Harrison Jr. Right. And Bobby Knight just passed away. And, when Michael Jordan was coming out of college, who was it? The Rockets called him and said, hey, listen, we have to draft a center. And he goes, I don't draft Michael Jordan and play him at center. Like, he's the player you want to draft, right? And so maybe it wasn't the Rockets. Maybe it was because the Rockets took Hakeem number 1, and I forget who took Sam Bowie. Or it might have been Portland. Portland took Sam Bowie. Yeah. And he said, yeah, great, play him at center. It doesn't matter. You can't do that in the NFL, right? That's not the situation. And so, like, if you need a quarterback and you have a guy that you think is a transcendent quarterback, you don't draft a wide receiver, because that doesn't help you. You know what I mean?
It's true of the other 21 positions on the field, but not of quarterback. And I will say, I know I have made it known here that I'm not a big Drake May guy too. So that's my opinion. You saw the Twitter thread.
Yes, I did.
Put together on him. Man, I watch his tape, and he makes some of the same mistakes that Mac Jones makes, like down to the beats. Like, it's the same. It literally looks like it's the same thing, the same jersey number and everything. And I'm like, I'm not sure if that's what I'm interested in. He wouldn't be my guy. If they're sold on him and they're in a position to draft him, you draft him. Like, if you think you can get a quarterback and you think he's the guy, you take him. That's really all there is to it. Beyond that, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. might just be the best prospect in this draft. And he'd be a hard guy to pass up on if he's on the board, especially because he makes any future quarterback you draft makes their job a lot easier.
100%. Yep, 100%. And so that's one of those things where I look at it and just think, like, all right, we're going to have options at the top of the draft. We're going to be at the top of the draft, right? We're going to have some options there. And now could be a situation where you get to 5 and you don't love any of the guys on there, but someone else has fallen in love with Michael Penix Jr. or Jaden Daniels or, the kid from Oregon, Bo Nix, or whatever, right? Or, whatever. And you don't love those guys at 5, and you can trade back to 12 and pick up a ton of draft capital, do it. And then draft whoever you can there, because you're going to need the picks. You're going to need them, because you have to fill with a whole ton of roster spots, right? So I think that, I don't hate it. I got eviscerated for saying they should trade if they get to the number 1 pick. But whatever. We're not going to get into that conversation, because we're way too far into the podcast to get into that conversation. But I do think that, depending on what's on the board, moving down may not be a terrible idea, as long as you're not moving down too far. I still want to get a blue chip player, but I think that this is a very deep draft where you can get a lot of blue chip players. And so
I agree.
That becomes a situation for me. If you get the number 1 pick, Caleb Williams. For me, it's Caleb Williams.
I like Caleb Williams. Yeah.
And
I got to watch a little. I haven't watched it. I've watched a lot more May than I have of Caleb Williams, but he's the guy I lean towards. And Caleb Williams has flaws, but I like him. Yeah. Except you, Pat.
That's true. That's a great point.
Yeah.
So,
so we got a bye week here. It's nice to take a week off.
Yeah.
Watch college football this weekend, or maybe just stay away from football this weekend if that's.
I'm gonna take my children to the Taunton High School play on Sunday afternoon at 2:00 in the afternoon.
Sounds lovely. Letting the whole internet know exactly where you were gonna be.
Yes.
So
come find me. No, I think it's 2:00. I don't even know. Could be 12. I have no idea what the hell the time is. I just know it's during the day, and I wouldn't be able to go if it wasn't the bye week. But that's, it's like, I don't care this weekend. I'm like, whatever, dude. I'm not worried about it. So,
I'm gonna watch a little college basketball this weekend. That's back. We got some tournaments starting back up again. Shout out to my Friars, beat Wisconsin, blew them out last night. So
love it. That's right. Down goes Wisco. All right. Before we get way off track, let's kind of finish up let's finish it up here.
Yeah. Do you want me to do my college game to watch this weekend?
Okay, do your college game to watch, and then we'll get into the prop bets afterwards.
Okay. A game I got circled, and it's funny because we were just saying some not so nice things about this man, but UNC at Clemson, 3:30 Saturday Eastern on ESPN. Drake May, road game against a good defense there. I mean, that's really all there is to it. This is a really good test for Drake May. This is the type of game, even for me, a guy who has not liked him, where you can really change your draft stock if you play well in this game. So that's the one I'm watching this weekend. If you're watching with draft stuff in mind, lots of good college football this weekend. The real good weekend for college football is the Saturday after that. But we got 2 weeks here of some good games. Yeah, that's the one I'd tune into.
There you go. I like that. Okay. That's good.
I was going to put, I see a lot of Jaden Daniels love in the chat. I was going to put his game, but LSU is playing like Georgia State on Saturday. They got a real nobody scheduled. So, if you want to watch Jaden Daniels just destroy somebody, you can watch that game, but you're not going to learn much about him as a prospect from that one.
Good point. That's a good point. Would you like to do your prop bets first? Before you do, though, I'm gonna have you go first. But before you do, creeping up on you, sir.
Oh no.
You went 1-1. No, I'm sorry. I went 1-1. You went 0-2 for the second week in a row. You had the Lions Chargers under 48.5. That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
That's a really bad one.
And you also had Tyson Bagent over 19.5 rushing yards. That one, of course, didn't
hit either. 5 carries for 12 yards.
Yeah, it was rough. Not good. Meanwhile, I went Will Levis over 212.5 passing yards, which did not hit, but I did take the Pats Colts under, which was just a real comfortable hit on that one. Matter of fact, I had a four-leg parlay that won me like $25. I had the Colts under. I had the Sunday night under with the Jets. I had the Cowboys over, and I faded you and went with the Lions Chargers over and hit on all 4 of those. So,
look at you.
Yep. So anyway, what do you got for your first prop bet? Week 11.
I couldn't. I always do a Thursday night one. I couldn't believe that this was the line here. This is plus money, Pat, on this one. Lamar Jackson over 1.5 passing touchdowns.
Oh, Lamar Jackson over 1.5 passing TDs.
Give me
for plus money. I like that.
Yeah, give me two touchdowns there in the air for Lamar Jackson. And then my other one, we're going to the Sunday night game, Vikings Broncos, which I cannot wait for this game.
That's gonna be a good one.
This game, it's not gonna be good. It's not gonna be good, but it's going to be entertaining. It's going to be chaotic.
It might be good. I don't know. The Broncos
depends on your definition of good. Neither of these teams are good, but it'll be entertaining because you get to watch Josh Dobbs, and we just saw whatever happened with the Broncos against the Bills in that bizarre football game, which we haven't even talked about here. Amazing to watch the Bills lose in that fashion.
So good.
Give me the under on this one, 42.5 points. I think a lot of weird things are going to happen, and I don't think a lot of points are going to be scored.
Under 42.5. I like it. The Broncos are playing good defense as of late, last 2 weeks, after giving up 70 points to friggin' the Dolphins. That's really good.
That's really looking like a one-game blip for
really
both sides right now, which I think goes to show a lot about football and how, it really is week to week. And there's a lot of randomness in the sport.
Yep. By the way, what I forgot to say was that overall, you are 7-13 for the season, and I am 6-14 on the season. So, not great from us through 20 picks, but that's maybe we'll go 2-0 this week and change that all up.
I'm winning this week, Pat.
My two picks. I also went with a Thursday night game. I went with another plus money. I think this is plus 250. I went with a Keaton Mitchell anytime touchdown. Mitchell anytime touchdown.
That's good stuff right there.
2 weeks in a row, maybe going for 3. I kind of like that. And so that's what I went with. And then I decided to go. It's funny because we just talked about the Dolphins game against the Broncos. You picked the Broncos. I am picking the Dolphins game. The Dolphins are playing the Las Vegas Raiders. And instead of going with the regular over, I'm going with the Dolphins team over, which is 29.5 points. So I'm going Dolphins team over 29.5 points. So I'm projecting 30 points plus for the Miami Dolphins this weekend against the Las Vegas Raiders on a 2-game winning streak. At some point, that interim magic is gonna fade away, and I think that this might be the week that interim magic goes away.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there.
So that's what we got. That's what we got. So it's getting tight. It's getting a little tight over up at the top there. So we'll kind of see. We'll see where that goes. It would be fun. I think it'd be fun to kind of draft these picks. But what's really interesting about this is that we've been doing this now. This is our 11th week, right? 11 times we've picked 2 prop bets each. We've never picked the same prop bet. And
we don't coordinate this.
We don't talk about it before the game. I mean, there are a billion prop bets, but still, the fact that we've never picked the same prop bet is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is. You know what? We're on different. We've had like the same vibes in our prop bets a lot of times, but we pick different games for it, and I find that interesting.
Quite true. So, all right, you want to do the trivia question, and then we'll get into the final segment. Of course, trivia question. In this case, we Gary Sauerbutts was the winner of the first half trivia. We will do the same exact rules, and we'll do the drawing at the end of the season. So the first person to answer gets their name entered into a drawing to win something from the Patriots Pro Shop that we will send to you, or perhaps a gift card if you're close to the Patriots Pro Shop, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. All right. This week's question, and we're going Patriots Giants themed since Pat's got them out of the bye here in 2015. The Patriots went into New York to beat the Giants with Rob Gronkowski scoring that 76-yard touchdown, I believe it was, breaking a tackle and running down the field for a go-ahead score in the fourth quarter. But can you tell me which other Patriots tight end that game caught the opening score for the Patriots?
Okay, yeah. I like that one.
Yeah, testing everybody's knowledge of those 2015 Patriots. Somebody's going to get this one. I feel
That's a good one. I do remember Malcolm Butler getting smoked for a deep touchdown to OBJ.
It was such a funny game because the Pats had like an 8-minute opening drive, methodical march down for a touchdown, and the Giants scored in like one play to answer.
Yeah, that was a fun game. So, by the way, before we get into this week in sports history, you touched on it, but like seeing the Bills lose the way that they lost was just so glorious. I mean, the Patriots have been terrible. It's been an awful season to be a Patriots fan, but it is still nice to know that the Bills still can't win. Like they still can't win.
And
good.
In truly, truly hilarious fashion.
Yeah.
I mean, just neither team wanted to win that game.
Well, no, really not. I mean, honestly, just what an incredibly stupid. I've never seen such a stupid play. Now,
from which team?
Well, the Broncos, I have no idea what they were thinking. I assume it was third down. He took the knee. Did he take a knee on third down?
Yeah, they took the knee on third down and then got the kicking team on so they could kick it with no time left because there was like 25 seconds left when they nailed it.
And so I understand that you don't want to give the Bills the ball back. I get that. But like, what are we doing, dude? You didn't need to do that. That's lunacy.
Just overthinking it.
And by the way, after the kick, there was still 5 seconds left. So they lined up. They kicked it way too fast. They had plenty of time to get the team out there, take your time, and then kick the field goal. And then bailed out obviously by the Bills. But like, what the hell are you doing?
And then the Bills, the way they substituted too. I mean, how do you miss 12 men? Why are you even substituting? To be honest, like. You should have an idea what's coming and just get into something so you don't have to worry about it. And if you are going to substitute, do it right and take your time substituting so that you're messing up the timing of the Broncos. It's just
right. Well, that's the other part of it is that you have to wait. You have to wait. if the Broncos rush everyone on the field, the Bills have to have time to get everyone else on the field, and they didn't have to rush to do it. You know?
Yeah. Yep. Side note too here before we get to our on the stand sports history. I had just seen this. Benjamin Albright on Twitter said that he had heard that Washington ownership was interested in trading for Belichick. Not sure about the Chargers, is what he says.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. This offseason is going to be a really fascinating offseason because I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not sure. Things are very much in flux, and I think the Patriots could look very different next year everywhere. So there's definitely it's going to be a very intriguing offseason, one that we haven't had in 25 years. It's kind of crazy.
Basically, this is the first. This is going to be new for me as a Pats fan. It's something different in my lifetime.
Complete insanity. That's insane. So
yeah,
it's wild to think. So, anyways, all right, let's get into this week in sports history, and then we'll get you guys the heck out of here. We're almost 90 minutes in. Here we go.
And now for something we think you'll really like. This week in sports history.
All right, so I'm gonna go first. I have this day, which is November 15th, 1970. Paul Brown, as the head coach of the expansion Cincinnati Bengals, beat his former team, the Cleveland Browns, yes, which were named after Paul Brown. He was let go from the organization, and he said, screw you, I'm going to start my own franchise in Cincinnati, which he did, and then beat them in their inaugural year. Which he called his greatest victory, was beating the Cleveland Browns by the Bengals. Awesome.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I got a double here, Pat.
Oh, all right.
Two things, but same theme here. On this day in 1946, Ted Williams was picked as AL MVP, and on this day in 1967, Carl Yastrzemski was picked as AL MVP. So pair of Sox there win an MVP on this day. No Sox winning awards like that today, I'll tell you that much.
No. I do think also it's kind of ridiculous they hand out the awards so late. Why are you giving out the awards so late? The season's been over for weeks. And back then, the season must have been over for even longer than weeks. I don't understand why you're waiting so long. It makes no sense to me whatsoever.
It feels like the kind of thing that they should do in between like the championship series and the World Series, maybe, or like right after the World Series.
Or
if the regular season awards, do it after the regular season. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
That's a different sport. We're here for football, so.
Yep, that's it. I agree.
I will say we still don't have a correct answer for the Patriots tight end in 2015 to catch that touchdown. So throw your answers in there.
Yes, throw your answers in there. If you, again, if you're listening in podcast form, go on to the YouTube and do it there. All right. But either way, get out there and get your names in. So get your Patriots tight ends names.
Shout out to my dad for answering Aaron Hernandez in there too. Good one.
I believe Aaron Hernandez was already in jail at that point, 2015, I think.
Oh yeah. That was 2013, like April of 2013 when he got arrested. So
how about this? You ready for this? It was June of 2013, and I can tell you that because I was on a field trip with a bunch of sixth graders to Patriot Place the day Aaron Hernandez was arrested. And one of my little sixth grade girls was wearing an Aaron Hernandez jersey because it was her dad's. She had didn't even know who the person was, right? And so it was. Yeah, not ideal. I was like, oh God, why is she wearing that? So, anyways, Gary, I did not get your email address. You can email me though, Gary. So it's super easy. It's just patsnationnetwork@gmail.com. So you can send me an email there, Gary. It's super easy. patsnationnetwork@gmail.com. So just shoot me an email, and then we'll be in touch about what you want me to get. And what we can go, where I should send it to. So, all right. So that's what we got. Thank you, everyone. Is that it?
We'll be back. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we're doing a show Sunday. I think we're doing one next Wednesday.
We're not. Yeah, unless
next
something
Tuesday.
happens this weekend. I doubt, which I doubt it will. We'll either do
I'm
Tuesday.
traveling too, so I'll be.
Oh yeah. So we won't. So I would say either Tuesday or Wednesday. Most likely Wednesday again, but theoretically could be Tuesday depending on what the schedule looks like next week. I know Thanksgiving's next week, so maybe we might have a different release day or whatever the case may be. So and people might have stuff going on. So we'll talk about it, but it will either be Tuesday or Wednesday of next week as we get ready for Thanksgiving coming up and the Patriots playing in New York for the Giants. And listen, everyone, enjoy the bye. Don't worry about the Patriots not winning this weekend. We don't have to worry about it. Patriots won't lose this weekend. It's a good weekend. So enjoy the time, and we will go there. So take care, guys, and we'll talk to you next week.